John Portman is the founder of Portman and Associates in Atlanta. He's the winner of the 2009 CTBUH Lynn Beedle Lifetime Achievement Award. Mr. Portman, you're probably known as best known as the inventor of the Atrium Hotel. And there's a great quote here that I found on the web that hotels used to offer cramped, dark quarters, dismal lobbies, claustrophobic lifts, and bedrooms whose outside windows offered views of blank alley walls or a dull, faceless city. So I stayed in an Atrium Hotel the other night, and I have you to thank for that. And thank you for that. Really your big project right now is the Incheon Tower in Korea. Tell us about that one.
Well, that's maybe the most exciting ever attempted, and not only attempted, but we're doing it. It's actually happening. But the mayor of Incheon came and he wanted something that would be significant from the standpoint of recognition of Korea. There was 1,500 acres of landfill that they were putting in there at Incheon, and this new bridge that was coming in from the new airport, the international airport. And this site is right there. And so it's more than the tower. It's 1,500 acres total. So it involves really a community, a broader community than the tower. However, the tower is a community itself, and it's a thoroughly mixed-use tower, and it has everything that a community would have. It has retail, it has office space, it has hotel, it has condominiums, it has apartments, it has specialty restaurants, and it has obviously the ubiquitous observation deck. But this design of this tower was to show what, or to give an image of the unification of Korea. And by doing this vertical thing and making it functional all the way up, and unlike most towers that get like this, we did it in a vertical truss kind of way, and where we needed the big floor spaces, they were at the bottom, but putting the housing, and we needed smaller floor plates. And we wanted people who lived in this tower to have views of the ocean and the views of the surrounding area. And so it was the function of how we wanted to put this thing together, and the bridges become community centers within the tower, and where it will have all kinds of activities. And so it's not just a typical tower where you buy a condominium and you're in there and that's it. And it's you go down the elevator and you're. We are very concerned about how the public and private space of the tower function. And at the base of the tower, we have an indoor lake that's almost the size of Piazza San Marco in Italy. So the tower is sitting next to the ocean, and it's so we're bringing water into it. And this is a shopping and entertainment complex around this, and it is a thing that can not only serve the people who live within this community, but the visitors who will come. So for the locals and all of it's really a community facility, and it will be extended as we go out in a more horizontal way. But we have the combination of the people-oriented horizontal community unifying with what I call the vertical community. But it's all about people. It's all about how can we create something that enhances the life of people, and they feel good about it. They want to be there and have all the conveniences and everything that is what life's all about. And so we come at it from really the user's point, the people who live there. In this case, it's more than that, because this will become a real centerpiece, and we'll have an awful lot of what I call visitors. And so consequently, we have designed it in such a way that the vertical community can be private and exclusive in its own way, and it comes down into this great sort of town center, and this great open space beneath the tower, which will be flooded with light and vegetation, and so it is a total community. It's a total environment, and we've tried to create something there that the little guy who comes there doesn't get lost. I mean, he feels comfortable in this huge, huge thing. And so trying to develop things, whether they be amenities or all kinds of activities that people can participate in, and how it can all work together vertically as a community as well as horizontally as a community, tying into the rest of Songdo.
This sounds to me like the way that you developed Atrium Hotels as really a refuge for people who are traveling, and kind of an oasis where they could go. Does this design concept spring directly from that?
Well, it's a lot of it springs. The Atrium was all about people again. I mean, in an urban setting, and where in our society we have the streets of wall-to-wall cars and trucks and buses and fumes, and the level of anxiety in our society is high. And we wanted to do something with the original Regency, which was an antithesis of all that. So that not only do you see in most cities, hotels come down to the sidewalk, and you come down from your room and you walk out and you're on the sidewalk. There's no really public space. There's no what I call environmental lungs. And so when we developed the original Atrium, the whole idea was taken from how people respond and how we can counteract the anxiety level and how we can release the spirit. And so we wanted to create these big interior spaces that worked as though they were an exterior piazza. So trying to marry exterior spaces which are public to interior spaces which are public. You see, all cities break down into public and private space. The hotel room, the office space, all of this is private space. But when you come down out of that private space, you enter the public arena. And so we are very concentrated on that public arena, and how, when you come into this public arena, how you can transition through the city. Once it does it, you don't just come down and you're out on the sidewalk, and and that's it.
We haven't talked very much about Korea as a market for architecture and tall buildings, primarily because a lot of the action right now has been somewhere else. It's been in China, it's been in Hong Kong, it's been in Dubai. So this is really the first super tall of this magnitude to go up in Korea. And I know that you've been involved with the market. If my memory serves here, that I remember a project, Daewoo Center. Does that ring a bell? That had to be at least 10 years ago, and
It's
probably
been-
more.
Yes.
So I know that you've been in the market for a while. What can you tell us about what the Korean sensibilities are in terms of a super tall building, how their culture plays out in what these creations are, and what it is they're looking for in a structure?
Well, what we do, we don't try to say the Korean people this and the Japanese people that and the Chinese people this. We try to go to the core and the essence of the human being at that level in reference to environmental circumstances. And we have found that when we do that, we really connect with all societies, and we are working in a lot of countries, and so trying to get into the cultures, which we do. We respect the cultures, but to take and take the cultures and then weave it into something that is really the 21st century, and take it forward, but not really throw everything in the ash can, but try to bring the culture into it and evolve it. But if we deal with them at what I call the innate common level of the human creature, then those kind of things. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that, for instance, we're all part of nature. We are nature. And so we have a natural affinity, regardless of what country we are. We have an affinity related to nature. So all of the nature that can be brought into a project, and that includes lakes, waters, fountains, all kinds of things that people relate to in a positive way. We interweave those things as we develop these things so that they become connectors, and that they don't relate to just an American or an Italian, but if we stay at the common level and try to understand the human being at that level, and then build our base from that, and then we can bring in, once we go beyond that, we can bring in the cultural uniqueness of whatever society we happen to be working in.
Are there things specifically unique to the Incheon Tower? I know there's the dual form representing the two Koreas and reunification. Are there other things that we can look at and say this is really a characteristic of this culture?
Well, what I find about the Korean culture is that it's a very progressive culture. It's when I say a progressive culture, there is a huge thirst for knowledge in Korea, and the work ethic in Korea, and the kinds of activities that they do in Korea. And so to pull out a single thing would be very difficult, because it would be really trying to pick something that's more traditional and bring it into this. We're trying to stay away from that, but bring the spirit of that into what we do.
Your creations, the environments and the places that you create have a history of transforming cities and changing contexts, certainly with Peachtree Center in Atlanta, with the Renaissance Center in Detroit.
Embarcadero Center.
And in fact, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about the Renaissance Center in Detroit, which now is several decades along, and Detroit is still going through a lot of changes. As you look back on that project, what are you thinking now? Because here's Detroit again, years later, trying to redevelop, and here is this Renaissance Center once again at the middle of all of it.
Detroit is a special case, and Henry Ford wanted to do something there which would be a great contribution to Detroit and to Detroit's future. And the site that they had assembled was along the Detroit River and the 13-lane freeway. I forgot the name of it. And so the site was isolated with the trains ending up terminating at one end, and then the Ford Theater and everything at the other end. And then the tunnel from Canada coming in at that same point. So the site was, in a sense, isolated. And we had to do something back in those days, which was big enough to where it would have its own critical mass, so that it could survive in a critical mass situation. We couldn't do one little building there, and then like we did in Peachtree Center, we built one building at a time over many years there, and the same thing goes for New York City with the Marriott Marquis. We couldn't go in there at the time. Timing is everything. What is happening in the city at the time you're trying to do something, and what are the problems that you're trying to solve, and how do you want this thing to encourage and be a can't think of the word I'm looking for, but to cause other people to come in and join with you and to create a wave of activity. And in the Detroit thing, it was back in the 70s when we had the small car problem, and we had the oil embargoes. And the first phase of the Detroit Renaissance was very successful, so successful we immediately added 2 more buildings. And then the economy of Detroit went down, and it got, I think, up to 20-something% unemployed, and which is back where we are today. We're getting deja vu all over again. And but architecture can do just so much. The economy and other things that are going on are bigger than architecture or a project. Look at where we are today. We've got great projects all over the country. Empty. They're great projects, but the timing is wrong and everything is got overdone. And so just so you build it doesn't mean that it needs a lot of help. It needs an economy to come along with it so that people can afford to rent space, can afford to buy from your retail activities. And so you're involved in all of that. And when you get into these major projects, you start the project and it takes years. And the economy and everything may look really great when you start it. And heaven help you if everything changes and everything's just the opposite when you end it. And that's where we are right now in this country, with so many projects finishing while the economy is going the other way. And no building can fight that. No architecture can fight that. And so it has to be involved with the whole environment of the economy and the city in which you are in, and the demands and the needs at the time. It's a timing thing, and it's very, very difficult to embark on something that's going to take years and years and years. The Incheon Tower will open in 1914. That's almost 5 years from now. I mean, how far out can you get? But you take the growth trends of whatever the situation is, and you interpret all this and bring it all together, and that's how all these big things are done. I mean, if it's just another building, just another thing tacked on to something that's, but if it's something big, Significant, like the Marriott Marquis in New York, which when we did that, it took 12 years to do that. And we went through 3 city administrations. I mean, it was the perils of Pauline, just getting that project done. But it's a huge success. And it turned New York around from this point of view of causing development to move to the west side. And it cleaned up Times Square, along with Giuliani. He helped out a little bit.
One of the things I wanted to ask you before all of this economic trouble came, there was a long period where we had Atrium Hotels, except there was a new wrinkle in that they were being built on the top of super tall buildings, like the Jinmao building in Shanghai being one of them. And that must have been, was that a surprising development for you, that all of a sudden here's new life for this type of creation, and there are 70, 80, 90 stories in the air?
No. What it is what you call multi-use projects, and how do you take, and we used to build projects for single functions. I mean, used to. If you go back in the early days of the 20th century in New York, for instance, in what we call the community, they had the laundry in the basement, a grocery store on the ground floor, a doctor's office on the second floor, and people lived upstairs. It was vertical, and the street was the living room, and the street was all that. Well, what happened with transportation communication, that all disintegrated it, because the fact they had lack of transportation, lack of communication, made them be much closer together, made that kind of thing. We're coming back to that in a different way. I mean, we are trying to create entities that allow people to come together as pedestrians, say, without having to seek wheels. And so what we're doing with these projects is, and I did this in Shanghai Center, which I don't know if you've ever been there, which is a total mixed-use complex, and it sort of set the formula for mixed use in China. That's their statements, not mine. But it was all about lifestyle and how people would live, and bringing this kind of community feel in, and taking and understanding that private space, you still maintain it, but once you come down, you come into a community and you come into something that's human. You don't just bounce out on the sidewalk and you're in the middle of nothing except noise and crowds and jive and nothing. So it's all about trying to make people places and responding to the people's needs.
And we should have mentioned that you are involved with the new Shanghai Center.
Yes.
That you're going to be working on that, and what capacity? What are you helping them with?
Well, we were the developers of Shanghai Center.
Okay. And
so we opened that in 1990, and we're still involved in it. They've been looking at expansion and this sort of thing, but that's all I can say about that.
I'll ask you one more question, and I may have heard you answer this before, but is there a John Portman style? Because we look at the Peachtree Plaza in Atlanta, and we look at the Renaissance Center, and I know one of my favorite hotels is the Regency Hyatt just near O'Hare. I remember when that building was built, and there was just something relaxing looking about these round forms, these lobes on this building in the nice grassy area. I don't know why that is, but that's the feeling I got. Is that a John Portman style, or do you kind of resist that characterization?
I hope I don't. I don't think in terms of style. I think in terms of problem solving, and I think in terms of people and how we can create something that's not only exciting but useful and very positive. I mean, I don't think about what happened yesterday. That's like yesterday's newspaper. You know, you got to be on down the road. You don't dwell on something you did last week or last month. You're on to something else. And we're pretty much that way. Now, if we learn something in one project that makes sense in another project, and it's logical and it fits, we don't impose. I like to say we want to expose, not impose. Preconceive something, you impose something. I like to take all of the circumstances, both physical and social, and out of those circumstances come from that and let the thing be what it wants to be and respond to that. And if you do that in every case, it'll be unique if you let it be. But if you try to impose some kind of fad or some kind of this or some kind of that, that doesn't work, at least not for us.
You have you've created a lot of buildings that have made life easier from people just taking that stress level down, and all of us road warriors say thank you, and congratulations on your Lifetime Achievement Award, and thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.